like to call to order the City of Belton Planning Commission session for July 19, 2021. May we have the roll call, please?
Chairman McPherson?
Here.
Mayor Larkey? Councilmember Powell?
Here.
Commissioner McDonough?
Here.
Commissioner Monahan Bass?
Here.
Commissioner Vest?
Here.
Commissioner Christie? Commissioner Anderson? And Commissioner Pryan.
Here.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Mr. Christie. I would entertain a motion. We do have the minutes before us. Would entertain a motion concerning the approval or any notes that need to be made or adjusted to the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the June 21st, 2021 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second? Second. All right, thank you, Mr. Christie. Any comments, adjustments, Councilman Powell?
Well, under the dot where it says the berm will be 10 feet from existing grade, I believe I said that, but I also said the berm wouldn't work at all unless it was adjacent to the truck route or the backyard of a resident. And number two, I pointed out that there were no berms on the west side of the property between houses and North Point. So there was at least one, maybe two, I don't know how you want to phrase them, but two additions to that black dot.
Well, Mr. Powell, let's be precise. If you could just email me your preferred language.
Sure, I will.
We can just make a motion subject to those changes, and we can drop in your preferred language. That way we capture it exactly as you'd like it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Councilman. Any additional corrections or additions? Seeing none, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion does carry. I would like to ask at this time, we do have several hearings this evening, and would just like to find out, do we have anyone here representing, or do we have a representation here for each of the hearings this evening? I know we do have for our first item, or I'm sorry, the second item. I see that. The vacation of the existing sanitary easement on 163rd. Anyone to speak for that? Just raise your hand. All right. And the special use permit, like I said, I know that they are here. Consideration of special use permit for the electronic message center. We're going to ask for a continuance on that one. Final development plan for Caliber Collision. Okay, thank you. And consideration for the final plat for the Martin Wood addition replat. Okay, great. Thank you. Just so we know that we've got representation here for those items, so appreciate that. So the first item we have, and I will just give a little bit of instruction. First several items we have are public hearings, and so these have all been notified through the newspaper, and those that would be affected within 185 feet of the locations are noted and receive notification as well. So that is what our first three items are going to be, will be public hearings. And so we will start by calling to order public hearing for consideration of the vacation of an existing sanitary easement located east of 163rd Street, north of Bradford Place, second plat. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, this is an application for a vacation or abandonment of an existing sanitary easement. I do have that on the overhead today. If you look at the yellow line, this application pertains to a 10-foot dedicated sanitary sewer easement. This is actually dedicated to the city of Belton in 1963. Since that time, no sanitary line has ever been constructed within that easement. Later, the Bradford Place second plat was approved and recorded in 1999. The sanitary sewer easement was not located or called out at that time on the approved plat for Bradford Place second plat. So as a result, the sanitary sewer easement, as you see, is partially located on lots 42, 53, 54, and 55. And these lots are now improved with single-family homes. Now this came to the city's attention in June of 2020. A preliminary plan was submitted for the Encore Apartments, which is the North Point apartment complex here. Now, our code at the present time requires with a preliminary development plan that all adjacent utilities and easements be designated on a civil drawing. At that time, this easement in yellow was revealed as being within 200 feet of the North Point Apartments, and it was brought to our attention that it does encroach on those lots. It shouldn't encroach on those lots. I think if we would have had our current codes in effect in 1963, then it wouldn't have happened, but codes have improved and thoroughness has improved, and so I think we're just in a situation where it's probably best to vacate that easement to get it off of those lots. Now, it should be pointed out that the easement does not conflict with those single-family homes. The homes aren't over the easement, but just for future clarity, it's important that the easement be vacated. As I said, there's no utilities in that easement. The homes in Bradford Place are served by sewers within the subdivision, and accordingly, the staff would recommend approval of the vacation of the 1963 easement. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this rather unusual item.
All right.
I make a motion that we approve the vacation of the existing sanitary sewer easement as noted.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mayor. We are in public
Oh, that's
hearings,
right.
so we do need to give the public a chance to comment if we have anyone here that would like to speak to that. All right, we will close the public hearing, and now, Mayor, your motion would be
I'll make a motion that we approve the vacation of the existing sanitary easement located in Bradford Place second plat.
Thank you, Mayor. And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Christie. We do have motion and second. Are there any questions or comments before we put this to a vote? Ms. Mayor.
Do we know why it wasn't caught when Bradford Place was developed by the developer or the engineer at the time?
Well, I just suspect that we didn't have a code requirement that required utilities and easements within 200 feet of a property to be designated on a survey, so.
All right. Any other questions?
So we're not using that easement at all?
No, ma'am. Mm-mm.
Where'd it go?
I advanced it. I thought we were done. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just making sure we're okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. All right, if there is no other discussion or questions, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Vest? Commissioner Pryan?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough? Commissioner Monahan Bass?
Aye.
Commissioner Christie?
Aye.
Councilman Powell?
Aye.
Mayor Larkey?
Aye.
And Chairman McPherson?
Aye. So thank you. That motion did pass. We will move ahead to our second public hearing and call that to order. And this is public hearing for consideration of a special use permit for Cozy Pet Hotel, an animal services kennel located at 342 North Scott Avenue. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, this application was filed to request a special use permit to allow new business in the vacant 2,900 square foot building at 342 North Scott. Now, this property is zoned a C2 commercial district, and this C2 zoning classification is intended to accommodate retail and commercial businesses along a commercial corridor. Now, certain related service uses, such as animal services or a kennel, are listed as allowed special use permits in the C2 district. And I have some new members on the Planning Commission. So basically, a special use permit is just a special zoning approval, a one-off approval of a use on an individual basis. And there are criteria in Section 40.2 of the Unified Development Code that provides direction as to approving a special use of this nature, and that's what we're going to undertake and do this evening. As to some details of that special use permit, the Cozy Pet Motel will be open to the public Monday through Saturday with general hours of operation between 8 and 6. There will be staff at the facility on Sundays for pets that are kenneled over the weekend. The business will have a total of 5 employees, with 2 employees at all times during regular business hours. Here is a photograph of the existing building. You might be familiar with it as you drive down North Scott. The existing building will be remodeled for the proposed use. There will be a tenant finish for the interior building that will include a reception area, customer lobby area, areas for dog grooming, kennels for dogs and cats, and indoor play areas. There will be an outdoor play area added to the south and west side of the building. Let me see, I can go back to that. Here is the interior finished floor plan. We have indoor play areas at this location, kennels in the center, public access, lobby, a service area here, cat kennel back in the corner, and what I just mentioned was outdoor play areas to the west and the south. Those will be fenced for security and finished with Astro Turf or an artificial surface for play activities. The applicant's present this evening, and they will be providing details on methods of cleanup and disposal of pet waste at the facility, and that information will be available just shortly. Now, the Unified Development Code has a parking requirement for any use. Parking requirement for kennel of 29 square feet is just 3 spaces. There are 7 spaces available on site, so staff believes that's sufficient for customer drop-off, pickup, and for employee parking. Also, it's important to point out that the Missouri Department of Agriculture provides rules for animal care facilities. They have a pretty extensive handout for animal care facilities. Now, a vast majority of that pertains to veterinarian operations and to breeding operations, but there are sections pertaining to kennels, and they will be required to obtain a license from the state and an annual inspection from the state of Missouri. And the applicant is aware of that. As I stated, a special use permit is a special zoning approval for a service type use like this, and our code has certain criteria that have to be addressed and findings of fact by the Planning Commission, and those are summarized in the staff report, and the applicant will be speaking about those criteria in a little bit more greater detail. Briefly, the Planning Commission needs to make findings on impact of the public welfare and convenience to the public, impact on property values in the neighborhood, and just some findings on the nature and intensity of the operation with respect to the immediate neighborhood. So those are items of information that should come out of this public hearing. I'll conclude and state that the staff does recommend approval of the application, subject to the applicant bringing forward evidence and testimony pertaining to those standards. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and of course the applicant's present.
All right. Thank you, Director. And I'm sure the applicant is speaking in favor of this, so as a part of our public hearing, I'd like to ask the applicant to go ahead. If you would come to the podium and just state your name and
Okay. Well, my name is Brittany Kirby.
And Brittany, you can use the keypad there on
Oh, awesome.
the tablet,
Okay,
on the laptop.
gonna move this over. Okay, short person, sorry. All right, so as you know, we're going to be opening up a pet boarding facility and kennel area. We would also offer daycare services. Now, this is for our community to provide an additional outlet to the community's growing demand for pet boarding and daycare services. From post-pandemic life, it's causing a huge flux in what is largely being described as the generation of pandemic puppies. So with that huge flux, we're now needing an extra outlet for some of those, where those dogs need to go. So we know there was many major concerns. One, I'll turn you to the yard. We will have a 6-foot-tall privacy fence, in which case we're thinking of doing a vinyl fence in addition to a dog-proofer extension that will be above it to help prevent any extra escapees. Now, the dogs are always going to be supervised. They're never going to be alone. But that is one of the preventatives that we did put down. Okay, then going into the yard, we are of course, going to be using the artificial turf. And I had done some research, because I know Dave was looking into that. There actually isn't artificial turf that is specific towards dogs. But when you look at the knitting on the back, the more porous it is, the more water flow you will get going through that artificial turf. So rainwater and such should be able to percolate down through that with no issues. Okay, and I'm just going to go further down. Okay, drainage, of course, with the privacy fence, there's always going to be a 2-inch gap from the ground to allow water flow to go through. And like I said, in addition, there is a natural slope we found that's in the back of the property that sends all the water away from the building and further towards the tree line. And like I said, any additional rainwater or residue would percolate through the artificial turf into the sand ground mesh that we would have underneath. Okay, and then if you go into the parking lot, I thought it had 8 spaces, but it does have the 7. So we have 7 spaces, and we have 1 space going out, and we have the other one going in to allow ample flow for the direct traffic. It will need to be sealed and painted to make sure that we're not getting any potholes or anything developing. Now, one of the major concerns I know that many people had was, of course, the smell, because we will be dealing with animals. One of the biggest things is always to follow procedure first. So as soon as it drops, you pick it up. And they would be wrapped up in plastic baggies and then put into a 5-gallon bucket in the backyard. And I have on the floor plan where all of those individual things are going to be placed if you want to know where they're located. Fecal matter is all then taken at the end of the day, or usually around 5 o'clock, and taken to the dumpster. And that's going to be every day. And then, of course, it's picked up weekly by the trash department. And, of course, I have those locations on our little site plan. In addition to that, we will also have green solutions that we will be spraying the yard down with, and they would be non-hazardous. These different solutions are things like Simple Green Odor Eliminator and Uricide. They are natural enzymes that break up bad bacteria, and they would not be considered hazardous to the environment. Okay, and one of the other concerns I know that we had was, of course, the noise, because people worry about dog barking. Okay, so while we are considered a kennel, our facility is actually significantly smaller than average, and therefore so is our capacity. Most of our spaces inside are going to be enclosed rooms rather than the big open kennel areas. And they will have noise dampening insulation in between the walls to help dampen out some of the that noise. In addition, there are other precautions that we could also add, such as acoustic paneling that we could put either via the ceiling or the walls. And if need be, we can also install an industrial curtain perhaps in front of the windows, because I know those large windows are there and people might be concerned about customers walking past. So there are several different things that we can do to help prevent that. Okay, and I think that's all I had. I couldn't think of any other questions that anyone could have. Is there any other questions?
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant at this point?
What's your open target date?
I'm hoping September.
Thank you.
I'm hoping before the holidays.
Pretty aggressive plan.
Well,
For that.
yes, it's
Yes.
good to be ambitious.
Right. Mayor?
It may have been mentioned before, are you purchasing the building?
Yes.
Great.
And are there what's the facade on that building, Dave?
The materials?
Yeah.
Brittany, can
Are
you
there any
help me?
changes to the facade? I guess I should have asked.
Yeah, they're not making any exterior changes.
Okay.
I'm the realtor for the buyer. The existing material used in the building is cinder block.
What's happening on the north side of the building? There seems to be space there too.
Let me see where you're at. Where on the
Well,
north
it's
side?
actually one of Dave's things.
Yeah, it's
I
parking.
think those are
spaces.
parking spaces.
So there's parking in front and on
Yes.
the north side? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And let me just ask, since we are in public hearing, are there any others that would like to speak either in favor or against? If you'll just come to the podium, state your name, and
I'm Kenny Wadawa. I am the owner of KJet Services, which I lease the building next door. I have a question, several questions actually. I have 5 girls in there on a day-to-day business on the telephone all day long. In the past, when this was rented out to a church or something like that, they had children out back, which would be on the west side. And I have a lot of conferences and video conferences in that room adjacent to that. And we've had to go over and ask them several times to please quiet the children down. And because it gets into the video and so on and so forth. So my concern is I honestly wished you would have came and spoke to me, before we had to come to this. There is water problems out back that need to be attended to before I feel any kind of turf or anything that can be put down. In torrential rains and big rains, in the past, it has flooded my building and my back door coming off of that piece of property. There is a ditch out back that somebody has made, and I keep that clear constantly. And I actually, with the seller's permission, the last time that I flooded, he allowed me to go over. I'm the one that made that drainage on that property with that slope. And that has helped. I don't know about a torrential because we haven't had a torrential one yet. The water seems to be coming off the railroad. I think it's probably the next building up. Something about the ditching in there is totally wrong because it just flows over the rock wall that you saw. So basically, I'm concerned with that because I don't want to flood. I did all that at my expense. There was broken curb. I also put asphalt back in that point. I also added a bump, basically a speed bump, all the way around to try to direct the water to the front of my building instead of to the back when it did overflow. So my personal opinion, I think there's a lot more thought that needs to be going into the kennels or whatever's going out back, the play area. I'm concerned with noise. I don't think a white vinyl fence is going to do it. I think something else needs to be. And there's 7 parking spots, which really I counted 6. There's 3 on the north side, which if they park in there, I have over like 24 employees, and we have meetings in that back room. So that my parking lot is going to be filled, and we're going to be blocking them in if they park on the north side. I don't want to sound like I'm totally against this. I want to be a good neighbor, and I'm all for this coming in, actually, because I board my dogs in Harrisonville, and I'd only have to go 10 minutes. But I think there needs to be some more thought progress, and maybe if you guys want to come talk to me, you know, I don't want to interrupt my daily business. I'm in the process of buying that building, and I've actually put it off when I've heard about this, because I want to see what's going on here first before I purchase mine for a lot more money, basically, than what they're asking for that one. Just looking out for mine. The other thing that you mentioned, that you had an entrance and an exit, I don't know which one, but if you look at the black line that's in the parking lot, I'm being told by the owner of that building, he gave me a footage mark off the end of the curb where he thought was the property line, and I seal coated my parking lot, so your second entrance is actually my entrance. So I don't mind them using that, but I have a feeling that if they have 5 employees there during the day, that's 5 vehicles, and they got 6 parking spots, 7. So where are the customers gonna park, for one? Number 2, they will park in my parking lot, because before, when that was rented out, people would park in my parking lot, walk over there, which I don't really have a problem with, but I have a deal worked out with Belton Transmission that his overflow cars, he can put in my parking lot while they're being worked on. When they get done, they bring them over there. They might set overnight or whatever, picked up the next day. I don't want to ruin that with him. If I've got a bunch of other people parking in here, like I said, I don't know how much business or whatever is going to come in. But my concerns, like I said, on the parking is the north side, and I have people turning around in my parking lot all day. I'm not a retail business, I'm an office. So I don't have people coming in and out. My other concern about me buying this is how much asphalt potholes on my property side am I gonna have to take care of, or can we work out a deal where you help out with maintenance, you know? Like I said, at this point in time, I'm totally against this. I can't have this beside my business. And that's just from what I've, you know, had with kids and everything out there. And like I said, I haven't they didn't come over and talk to me or anything. I could have told them about some concern that I had with water problems. And that's another reason why I haven't bought the building yet. I'm kind of seeing what's going on with water before I buy it. And this is some of the problems that I've seen. So that's basically my concerns.
Okay.
You know, I'm trying to protect my property too, so. You know, and, I mean, the other thing, what time of the day are they letting the dogs out? It might be during the hours that I'm really busy, and then my girls are in there on the phone, and they got all the dog background, because we do hear it very plainly. Or I get on a lot of video conferences with people all over the country, and the last thing I would want, I have a TV just like this, and my back sits to that wall. And when there's people out there, I hear every little noise, and my building's blocked too. And I'm just worried about, you know, them saying, well, hey, you know, excuse me, let me go quiet the dogs down. You know, I don't want to have that to conduct business. So the Astro Turf, as she's talking about it, putting down, I think that's a good idea with the sand and things. I am a little concerned. I know I'm just concerned about the runoff, because it doesn't only affect me, but it would affect Light's Car Wash in the end. That poor guy gets the brunt of the torrential downpours. All the trash and the debris from the trees flow down that through my concrete ditch that somebody made and goes right into his parking lot. So with that, there needs to be some trees and whatever addressed in the back that you see along with that wall. I just think there's a lot of work there that really needs to be done before they could open. And that's just my opinion.
All right. Appreciate your comments.
You bet.
For us. So, do we have anyone else to speak either for or against? If you'll just come to the podium for us, state your name.
My name's Ron Gardell. I own Belton Transmission across the street. I'm not for it, I'm not against it, but yes, I do agree with Kenny about the dog noise and stuff, because I have customers over there all the time with the young kids, and can't tell me a dog cannot break a leash or cannot get out. It will happen sooner or later, and will I have a kid or an adult get bit by a dog? That's my biggest fears. Other than that, that's my biggest complaints. I disagree with the fence, and I disagree with the dogs being 100% secured. I've been bit by dogs. I've had pit bulls and Rottweilers and stuff and German Shepherds. I know what it feels like. But that's my complaint.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, appreciate it.
You bet.
Anyone else? Yes. Again, just ask you to state your name for us. We know you're the realtor.
I am. My name is Bonnie Doss. Thank you for your time this evening.
Sure.
One of the things I would like to point out in favor of the business, and I'm not sure how many here are aware of it, there is actually a kennel, a boarding place, just across the street over here, just across the street from where we are now. And it's been in there many years. So as far as the worry and the noise, and that's most definitely want to acknowledge and a legit concern, I'm sure, for any business owner type thing. But this particular boarding facility is along the same lines, or maybe even a few more rooms than what Brittany is proposing for this business. So that lets you know. I'm assuming if there had been any concern, complaint of a noise ordinance or issues from a business that was, if it were right across the street from City Hall, we probably would be something that had been addressed many years ago. This particular business has been here for some time, many years, as a matter of fact. And then I did have a question. On a special use permit, just for my own personal knowledge, is that transferred in if a business is sold, or is a special use permit issued only to the individual and the business name?
No, our code allows it to be transferred to different ownership.
It does, okay.
It's tied to the building.
Gotcha.
to the
That was
property.
just something that came up actually in our office meeting, whether or not special use permits of this type were actually transferable. So that was something we, just as realtors, had a question about. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. But I just kind of did want to point that out. You know, that particular business has been there for some time and, you know, is still in business and in good conduct here with the city of Belton. So hopefully that would be a fear alleviant of the noise. If it were a huge deal for businesses, I mean, we've got an event center, we've got a restaurant and things of that nature just right there, and then City Hall across the street. And it's not something that has become a concern to the point that that's been addressed with that particular business. So,
Excuse me.
thank you guys.
Ma'am? Sorry. Question for you, since you're the realtor.
Yes.
One of the concerns was talking about the property line and the entrances and exits to this specific property that's in question. And there was a little bit of debate about whether both entrances and exits are a part of this property or not. Can you
I know that
answer to that since you're the realtor for the property?
the plat map that can be pulled up on realist tax. I don't know if that would give any clarification to that on that end. I don't know if, are there any surveys by chance? I know that the same particular, oh, here we go. The same particular, Bonnie. Yes.
Linda Stanley.
Hi, Linda, how are you? This is my cohort.
Can we
my
double
partner-
team here?
Yes, this is my partner
I'm
in
the
crime.
listing agent
Yes.
for this property of Next Gen Realty, Linda Stanley. And some of this is news to me, is all I'm gonna say, which probably makes me look maybe a little crazy, but I represent Debbie and Kenneth Kincaid, the current owners of that building. They formerly owned the Belton Shopper building that K-Jet is in. I don't want to speak out of turn here because I've jotted down notes feverishly. There was a lot of things said that were interesting.
Correct.
I'll just put it that way. But I do think at one point in time there was some sort of division made on that parking area and some changes there that were, I need to double check that because I don't want to be speaking out of
Maybe,
ignorance.
yeah, maybe we should look at the existing contract with K-Jet as to whether there were any easements granted to that building or not. Maybe that's some clarification that we need to get on our end for our buyers and sellers both.
I know my sellers had no objection to this special use permit, but obviously they're selling the building, so,
Correct, right.
you know,
One of the other questions, and the gentleman from K-Jet with the, I mean, very much legit concern about that runoff from the back, is that particular portion of slope and land, is that supposedly owned and maintained by the railroad?
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Right.
I know, according to what I'm supposed to look at, is it goes up to that ditch. So I don't know. I
Okay.
couldn't answer that.
Are you seeing, whenever you're talking about these torrential rains, is that where a lot of the debris and trash
Goes clear up
seems to
their
be coming
building.
from?
It comes down over the wall.
Over the wall where,
The wall was probably put in when that place was built, whatever.
is
year
that the wall
was,
to the south of this property?
To the west.
To the west of this
It's the
property?
rock wall where the trees are.
Okay, understood.
It comes over that wall in such a hurry, and it's all over that whole area, and it'll go clear up to the building. And by the time it swarms around, it'll come over the top of that curve, and that's where it comes into my building. So, and that's why I constructed the things that I constructed. That wall that's separating, that block wall, whatever is there, I don't know who put that up. I have no idea. And I don't even know why it's there. But it helps me with water. in my
Gotcha.
back door.
Gotcha.
The other thing I'd like to address while we're talking to you, I understand there's a dog kennel over here, and I understand I take my dogs to dog kennels, but I think the fact that we need to look at is we're behind buildings. There's a canopy of trees. So then that voice doesn't affect a restaurant over there. It does not affect this place here. It affects the immediate surrounding area because there's nowhere for that voice to get out. Does that make sense? So we're right there in between the buildings and we're epic. That's what happened with the children that were playing over there. They weren't playing really loud. They were kids. And dogs are going to be louder than children.
Well, like I said,
I guess I'm thinking of the traffic noise that's on North Scott over there and some of the other stuff.
well, yeah, I was gonna say, there's some traffic noise, there's some engine noise with repairs and things like that, and,
Well, I get your point.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and
Plus, it's not like
it's a legit concern.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, for his
legitimate.
business.
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. It's just a
Yes.
concern.
All right, Mayor, I think,
Mr. Chairman, I would make a recommendation that the applicant pull her request at this time due to the significant issues that seem to be present at this time and work on your plan a little bit. I'm not saying that you should do this, I'm just recommending, there's some big issues that you need to work out that you don't seem to be, that you didn't know about, and I think that driveway issue is something that needs to be worked out as well. So that would be my recommendation
Okay.
to the chair.
all right. One of the things that we could do would be to put a specific date and ask the two parties to get together and, to discuss some of these items that would be prior to the city council's meeting where they would ultimately act on the,
Seems like there's a way to do this, it just seems like you need to figure that way out.
need to get the two sides together to maybe work through some of those things. It doesn't sound like you're far off. It sounds like, you both want the best, you both want the same things. It's just a matter of how can we get there. And
That's all I'm after.
So I guess the chairman's kind of making a suggestion here. Maybe we could pin it down. One suggestion would be to have the parties get together and come up with a consensus and advise me before this goes to the city council on August 10th. So we would need an agreement by August 3rd. Okay. And if that's too quick, then we could continue this tonight to a date certain of August 16th and come back August 16th, and then you can tell the planning commission at a continued meeting how you've worked these things out. But I don't think that there's that much. I'd be pretty comfortable putting the burden on you to come back with an agreement prior to going to the city council. That way you're not losing any time. Time is money, and we want to be respectful of that.
okay.
Norman, Mr. Mayor, is that reasonable?
Yeah, whatever needs to happen. I just, it seems like there's too many things moving
Yeah.
that before we can make a decision even,
I
that needs to be resolved. And
definitely
I don't
agree.
want to slow you down, and I want to be, I understand you got a plan here, but I think obviously there's some stuff that need looked at.
Right.
We need a motion.
And obviously the driveway is probably the biggest,
Getting staff
you know.
by August 3rd.
yeah.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that gentleman back there is the same way, so.
No, he's
That would
got
be my recommendation for you to do. No, it's just me, so
Okay.
there's 7 or 8 others up here, so.
All right, so I think we are probably, I've not seen anyone else to speak either in favor or against, so we will close the public hearing portion and leave it for the council. Are there any additional questions, comments that we have from the commission at this point?
Well, of course, since we're a smaller facility, we would have to have a much smaller cap. So I would say, because you have to consider small dogs, some of them being in the same room, about 15. Most should have really, 15 dogs in there. For them, yes, yes.
Okay.
Like that would add on, of course, that would be very dependent.
Okay. So at this point, I think if we have any other questions or comments from the council, definitely can do that, or would be open for our.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, they won't all be outside at the same time, obviously. We take them out one individually, so you're not gonna get a whole group that's gonna be outside. Normally, because I was the manager here over at Bays at the Moon, we would take them out individually so that they can have some little bit of outdoor time, and we may or may not introduce them to another dog. But it wouldn't be all 15 at the same time. No.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Christie?
I would say that putting a quota on the special permit might not be the best thing, because I'm a dog owner. I have 3 dogs, and they work great together, and they could all go into one room together, and they would be fine. So I don't know that we want to limit the business in that regard, saying, okay, they hit their 15 or whatever, and now they can't accept any more, even though someone like me might have 3 dogs that can fit in one room. So I would agree.
Mayor?
Would the state regulate that? How many that you can have inside the structure? I would think that they probably.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah.
There is a balance of common sense versus how many people you have to handle
Yep.
the dog. You've got to think about emergency situations, if something caught on fire, who would evacuate all the animal safety. So, yeah, you can't
I'm
get
sure
too
that,
many,
yeah.
because then you're going to create more problems than you know, wish for.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that. I understand perfectly what you're saying, and I'm fine with leaving it up to common sense instead of having something written in stone and paper.
All right, I would entertain a motion. At this point, what has been suggested is that we do ask the 2 parties to get together and work out an agreement and report back to our director or to staff by 8/3 so that it could be done prior to the 8/10 city council session. And if we were to do that, then we could go ahead and approve the special use permit with that provision, that they get together and provide that. Otherwise, then we would have to continue it past that date.
Okay.
I make a motion that the parties get together, present back to the city by the 3rd, so that we can look at it and approve it at that time, so it'll go to
Well,
council.
the 3rd is the date prior to city council. I guess my thinking was, let me get consensus in a letter before it goes to the city council on the 10th. And then the city council could then review that, know there's consensus, and pass a first reading of an ordinance. That way they're not losing any time.
Right.
So,
So I will second that motion.
All right, so we do have a second. Any further discussion?
Can or both of you understand what we just did?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that both of you understand. Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? Then, if not, the roll call, please.
Commissioner Vest?
Aye.
Commissioner Pran?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough?
Aye.
Commissioner Monahan Bass,
Aye.
Commissioner Christie,
Aye.
Councilman Powell,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
and Chairman McPherson.
Aye. So, all right, thank you. And I want to say thank you to all the parties that were involved for coming and expressing your concerns and your dreams, both sides, and your willingness to work together. I think that just is great, a great partnership there. And so I appreciate that from all involved. So, all right. We do have another announced public hearing to go to, and that is for a special use permit for an electronic message center on an existing billboard sign located at the southeast corner of South Outer Road and 162nd Street at 16241 South Outer Road. And I would just say that the applicant, even though this has been announced in the paper and has been announced for a public hearing, the applicant has requested a continuance of this meeting until our, or of this item until our August 16th meeting. And so we would need a motion for continuance of this item.
I make a motion that we continue item C to August 16th, 2021 meeting.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And second, have a second. And any discussion? And does it need a roll call? Okay, and could we have a roll call, please?
I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
Commissioner Bass.
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
Commissioner Pryan,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough,
Aye.
Commissioner Monahan Bass,
Aye.
Commissioner Christie,
Aye.
Councilman Powell,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Chairman McPherson.
Aye. So we will have that to come back before us on August 16th. So that finishes the public hearings that we have scheduled for this evening. And we do, at this point, we will be moving into a couple of items for non-public hearings. Before we do, I need to take just a minute because I got so excited about getting into things that I forgot to, first of all, introduce our new commissioner, and James Pryan. All right, I wanted to make sure I said it right. And we are appreciative of you being willing to serve on the commission, and had a chance to talk with him a little bit before the meeting, and really looking forward to his involvement with us here, and I think will be a great addition. And so glad to have you as a part of our planning commission now. And also we have just for, especially for the commission's information, our city attorney was not able to be here this evening, that is normally here, Patrick. And so John, if you would just introduce yourself to the commission.
Commissioners, my name's John Mullane. I'm an associate of this normal city attorney, Patrick Corcoran. He asked me to fill in tonight. I've been up here once before, some months back. Seems like a long time ago. My past year time frame's a bit skedaddle, but I'm sure you'll see me again in the future. Just wanted to say hello and introduce myself. I'm honored to be here tonight.
All right, thank you, John. Appreciate that, and appreciate your being here. You're doing a great job. So we will now move into the non-public hearings, and basically the biggest difference between this and what we have been doing is that these are not, there is no notification. And I'm giving some of this because we've got a lot of people in our city that watch on the recordings. And so just trying to give some explanation as to our procedures and all in transparency for everyone. But items that require a public hearing have to be announced in the newspaper so many days prior to the meeting, and they have to be, surrounding neighbors within a certain distance have to be notified. Non-public hearings are more for just administrative things, looking at final plans and making sure that they match what the original plat was calling for. So the public hearings would be for things that would be like zoning changes, special use provisions, which we've seen tonight, and then the vacation or of easements and right-of-way, which we also had this evening. And those are the type things that require the public hearing, and then the non-public would be for development plans and other items like that. So that's the big difference between two. So we are moving into the non-public hearing for consideration of a final development plan for Caliber Collision located on the west side of Bradford Lane, approximately 400 feet north of East North Avenue at 160 Bradford Lane. And Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll briefly summarize the staff report that was in the Planning Commission agenda packet. As the chairman stated, this is an application for a final development plan at 160 Bradford Lane. This is a final development plan to permit the development of Caliber Collision. We have some new members of the Planning Commission, have some folks in the audience, but a final development plan is primarily, review of a final development plan is primarily for compliance with the standards of our code pertaining to building design, building materials, building form, and to check a plan against the landscaping provisions of our code. So those are the things we're tasked with doing tonight to review this final development plan. This application, as we stated, was filed for Caliber Collision. This is an automotive collision repair facility that provides repair for accidents, hail damage, windshield and glass replacement, and interior repairs. Caliber Collision has over 1,000 locations in 37 states. This location would employ a staff of 15 to 20 with Monday through Friday hours of operation of 8 to 6. The company has Missouri locations in the St. Louis area and Columbia, and I do believe the Belton site being considered tonight is the first location in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Now, the Planning Commission packet did include an applicant's narrative, more information about the company, and I did provide a link to Caliber Collision's website. So I hope you had an opportunity to look at the experience and expertise of the company. The property is zoned a C2 general commercial district. The property has been zoned commercial for an extended period of time, and a motor vehicle repair facility such as this is a permitted use in this zoning district, subject to meeting the final plan criteria of our code. The site is a 2.91 acre site. The proposed final development plan has an 11,580 square foot one-story building, and access to the site would be from a single driveway on Bradford Lane. Now, the plan meets all the requirements of that existing C2 zoning district. That C2 district is a retail zoning classification intended to provide mid-sized retail and commercial businesses, and the code provides certain criteria for parking and vehicle stacking. Our Unified Development Code requires one parking space per bay with a minimum of 6 spaces. There are 12 interior parking bays in the building, and there are spaces outside for customer parking and storage. Well, I don't think we need the news. There we go. Got customer parking directly in front of the building facing Bradford. That's where the customer entrance is under the canopy and access. And here you have storage space here, so there's parking far in excess of our code requirement. Our code provides for a 35-foot maximum building height. This building is 26 feet in height. I think one of the most important considerations is our code requires a maximum of or a minimum of 20% open space on a commercial site, and this property has 64% open space required. And we'll talk a little bit more about that open space in just a minute. One of the most important things with the final development plan is the building design and building materials. Our code requires all new commercial buildings to include 50% masonry on the front and side elevations. Let's see if I can get back to this. The proposed building, primary building materials are stacked stone. It's a little hard to see in this rendering, but there is stacked stone on the side of the office customer area, stacked stone in front that rises above the entry, comes across, goes down, and stacked stone that goes wraps around the entry on the front. There's also 3-step applied stucco, a very nice stucco application on that front elevation, and a split face block, and help achieve the 50% masonry requirement. The elevations also include a entry canopy, accent panels, and a architectural metal panel on the side elevations and north elevation. So the building does meet the design criteria of the Unified Development Code, including the offsets, the architectural features such as the canopy and the decorative parapet atop the building. There is a trash enclosure on the site, and it is constructed of materials. Trash enclosure is right here, and it's constructed of materials to match the building. All rooftop mechanical equipment is screened and not visible from adjoining single-family homes. Talking more about the landscape plan, I think that's one of the key assets of this site. The landscape plan, as I stated, provides over 60% open space, exceeding the code requirement. It provides required shade trees, parking lot landscaping, and street trees along Bradford Lane. Now, I'd like to talk about this area here. This is a 1.4 acre site that's going to remain permanent open space as a separation from the single-family homes to the north along Mallory Court. This 1.4 acre site has 28 Norway spruce and white pines, and those are planted at a almost mature height of 6 or 8 feet as a year-round green coniferous buffer to those single-family homes. And then the area itself, the 1.4 acre site, has plantings of sugar maple, red buds, and there's some subtle grade topographical changes across that 1.4 acres that give the site a little bit of character and design. And that was really designed to provide more of a visual landscape amenity separating this commercial building from the single-family neighborhood to the north. And I think it's important to point out that that 1.4 acres of open space is a part of this final development plan, and it will remain open space, and the landscaping will have to be maintained as our code does require. The only way that could ever be changed would be to amend this plan and come back through the public hearing process and change that. And that would be a plan amendment, and that would be a public hearing. And so not likely that would happen, but there would be a process if that was ever to happen. But at this point in time, it's part of the final development plan. The submittal did include utilities for water, sanitary, sewer, and staff reviewed that utility plan and determined that the proposed development has adequate public facilities. The detention is provided at the Marquee Regional Detention Basin, where payment of a fee in lieu of providing on-site detention is provided in our code based on impervious surface. And at that, I would just conclude and state that the staff recommends approval of the final development plan for Caliber Collision, as noted in the staff report, with 3 conditions noted for the approval with any motion. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we do have a representative of the applicant present this evening.
Okay. I'd like to just invite the applicant to go ahead and share anything with us. If you'll just state your name and...
Yeah, I'm Nick Four with Cross Development. I'm the development manager on the project. Had a whole page of notes here, but I think David did a great job at covering everything. Just wanted to tell you a little bit more about Caliber Collision. they're one of the largest collision centers in the country. As David mentioned, they've got over 1,000 locations, 37 states. One way they're able to do that is to really focus on the quality of the product they're providing and on-time delivery. The type of work that they're providing is, it's more minimal. The way it was best explained to me was most cars are able to drive on the lot versus being towed there. So that includes dent removal, collision repair, glass replacement, auto body rust repair, and much more. The variety of cars includes all different makes and models, including luxury cars as well. I know that rendering had some cars in the parking lot. That's really going to be the most you see on a daily basis. There's only 2 to 3 customers come into the site each day with this size building, so it's very minimal traffic flow. As David mentioned as well, 15 employees per shift. They're operating on a Monday through Friday work schedule. I don't have the specific hours for this site, but probably somewhere between 8 to 5 to 6 p.m. And then as far as covering the requirements, I know David explained most all of them, but we've been working for a while on the site. We originally laid out the prototypical site plan on this site, and the building was much closer to the houses. We've shifted that building further south. We've added the 50% masonry requirement to meet the city code. And then also are meeting the landscaping code and providing more. I know we've added additional landscaping in that open space there. I think we're going to provide a couple 2 to 3 foot berms. And then you already have that existing buffer between the residential to the north. And then I believe we provided a buffer on the south side of the lot there to sort of screen the storage yard. I've got a lot of projects going on throughout the country, and this is one of the nicer ones, so give David credit for that. It's one of our more expensive ones too, so I think it'll be a nice product for the city.
All right. Thank you. So any questions from the commission? Mr. Christie?
I can't really tell from the preliminary or final plan, but is there a sidewalk going along that, I guess that would be what, the west side of Bradford on your property?
The east side there. I don't know if there's a sidewalk. I think there.
It's existing.
Yeah. I was going to say the only way would be existing. I don't know that we're putting one in.
There's not an existing sidewalk on that side of the road. It stops at AutoZone.
Yeah, there's a sidewalk on their plan. If you look in Dave's office at the big plans, there is a sidewalk.
Okay.
But-
Yeah.
That's what I was asking, if there is going to be a sidewalk on that, along the property, along Bradford,
Yeah.
or not.
It's a required public improvement, so, yes.
Thanks.
I had a bunch of questions, a couple for Dave, but I'll start with you since you're standing up. You mentioned in the plans or someplace here about deliveries 2 or 3 times a day, maybe 4 times a day. Are those by semi-truck? They are at AutoZone, so I assume you're buying similar stuff, maybe.
Yeah, no, I don't think it'll be a semi-truck. If anything, it would be, a flatbed. And then, like I mentioned, some of the vehicles are even able to drive themselves to the site. And I would say that's probably the majority of what you're going to see is the vehicles driving themselves to the site.
Okay. Could you talk again about where your fencing is and what fencing it is? What type of fencing it is?
Yeah, so there's the required, and I don't know the specific plant that's being planted up to the north, but there's, that fencing, yeah. So
The plan doesn't show any fencing on the north, but that's owned by you guys. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, this is just our standard aluminum fencing that we provide to fence in the yard. So that gate will be open during business hours, and then it'll be closed once business hours are closed.
Okay, so, I think there was a reference in the detailed drawings about a sprinkler system for the landscaping. Is that true? Is it going to be, that whole plot north, is that going to be with underground irrigation or whatever?
That'd be my understanding, yeah. I'm just the development manager on the site, so I'm not as involved in the plans, but yeah, with that amount of landscaping, that's my understanding.
Okay. And earlier I heard that the reasons, and this is kind of back over here a second, I got to follow my notes, but the reasons we would have a public hearing is a variant, a zoning change or a SUP or a vacation of easements, but I think I'd heard Dave said if all of a sudden the owner wanted to put in something different in that 2 acres north of your building, then or Caliber's building, then there would have to be another public hearing, correct?
Sure, we have to address that. Mechanism does exist if somebody wanted to make that change, and that would be a public hearing, yes, sir.
Okay. And while I'm got your ear, and I think you explained this, but I just wanted to, since I'm new and for other people too, this is a final plan, but was there ever any preliminary plan that was brought, but, I mean, this is the only time we're seeing this, or any body of Belton is seeing this, right, correct?
With the property, as I say, the property's been zoned commercial for an extended period of time, and Caliber Collision has just come in with their final development plan that meets our code requirements. So there's no sense in having a preliminary plan and a final plan go through the process twice when you can come in and do a final plan that addresses all the criteria, so.
Okay. Let's see. And this has to do, I guess, with maybe the enforcement, but something you skipped over was that mainly for, I think, for noise purposes, the doors would be required to be closed during operation. And yet I went by a few auto body shops in Belton today and they had their doors open. So is that the normal procedure for Climate or for Caliber to keep their doors closed at all times, even on a nice day?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it's all the time, but from my understanding, they try to self-contain all of the work as much as they can.
Well, I mean, it says in the explanation of this up in the wording that it's all the time, but I don't see that happening at other auto bodies, so maybe it's just something we maybe have on the books, but we don't enforce. But I like to make sure that Caliber understands that that's something that definitely, since this is close to residents, that this should be something, because going to the next issue, you say there's minor things, but even when I take off my lawnmower blade, occasionally I need an impact wrench, so you're probably using impact wrenches every once in a while, and those can be easily 100 decibels, which means they're going to be 70 decibels if the doors are open, 70 decibels at the nearest residence. So again, it's imperative to keep the doors down when there's noisy work, and if this fact work at all, the doors should be closed.
And it's an air-conditioned facility too.
That's right.
And I think a lot of body shops are not air-conditioned, so I think that's part of the answer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and that is my understanding, and, I know we've done some sound studies in the past, and from my understanding, the noise isn't any louder than the traffic on the street, so I think it's very minimal noise.
Which direction do the doors face?
And Mr. Powell makes a good point. Let's make sure folks understand that, the doors all face south. There is no openings in the building as it faces north towards Mallory Court. So I think that's very important to point out. There's also an exit door that faces Price Chopper on this end.
What happens when there is someone who wants to drop their vehicle off at 6:10 or 7:10 or anywhere in the evening, or there's an accident and they want to bring it there at 2 a.m., where's these, what happened? What are they supposed to do? Are they going to be parking these on the street?
Well, I don't think that's normal course of business, but if that did
Well,
happen.
no, it's not normal, but.
Yeah, if that did happen, they've got, I don't know the exact number of spots up front, but at least, 12 to 15
Yeah.
customer parks up front.
But aren't those behind the fence? It looked like they were.
No, those are
Okay.
all outside.
They're outside the fence?
All outside the fence there, yes.
Okay, okay. And this is a weird subject because I don't understand a lot of it, but I got some questions to ask anyway. What type of stripping chemicals do they use? Do you know?
That I'm not aware of.
Okay,
yeah.
so, and that just leads into a whole bunch of laundry list of questions I won't bore everybody with, but there's a lot of permits that if you're using the, in quotes, inappropriate chemicals, or even the appropriate chemicals for your permit, then you're okay, but if you have a permit, but if you are using something that is permittable and you don't have a permit, obviously, then you're in trouble. So, are other caliber locations? Do they have like the one in St. Louis and Columbia? Do they have Missouri permits?
From my understanding, yeah, absolutely they would, and I'm just on the development end, but I would think those would probably fall under the operational permits that.
Well, if that's the case, then we got a lot of questions about stripping chemicals, solvent venting. I don't see any place on here where the vent is from the paint rooms. It's got the air, the solvent that's with the stuff that's being stripped off. That solvent has to, even if it goes through a high efficiency filter approved by the state or somebody, it has to go someplace. It has to go outside, and there is a requirement in Missouri. It can't be closer than 80 feet to a residence. Now you've got 180 feet, so you're good there. But you still, if you have too much going out, then you have to have a permit for that. And the location of that stack, I assume, is below all those parapet walls too. Correct? I mean, it's not extending above the parapet walls, correct? The stack or stacks?
No, it's all self-contained within the paint booth area.
Well, then if that's the case, where does the exhaust from the paint booth area go? Within the room? I hope not, for the workers.
Yeah, I'm not sure of that.
Okay,
I'm just
okay.
on the development end, so it's,
Okay,
it's more
yeah,
of a
well,
handle it once.
Yeah,
I guess I would, at some point, say if we're going to improve this, we should get more feedback from the actual caliber people, because I couldn't find material safety data sheets or any of the questions about possibly sandblasting, about hazardous air pollutants, about use of methyl chloride, storage of hazardous waste, disposal of solid waste filters,
Yeah,
worker
I mean,
training, all that stuff
I do know that. I mean,
is
they've-
not.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
know they've got 1,000 locations across the country, so.
Yeah.
Well,
they're
they might have
taking-
1,000 permits too,
And I think that the questions you're asking, Councilman, really are not the questions that pertain, though, to does this plan meet the C2 requirements that we have for that property?
Okay.
And that's what we have to focus on. The questions you're asking now are things probably that will be looked at with building permits, when the time comes for them to get their building permit and everything like that. That's when those questions could be addressed, I think. But at this point, really, all we have the authority to do is to look at this plan and say, does this match what that property is zoned for, yes or no? And that's really pretty much all that we are as a planning commission, all that we can do.
Well, but I don't know who's going to be asking those questions. I mean, I've been to, I think the DRC has already been passed through, so I don't know exactly who is going to be asking those. No committee is. I mean, this is the one point where citizens can say, do we really want something that may be releasing hazardous air pollution an HAP into the environment. I mean, and maybe it's completely safe, but we don't know that, and we're being asked to sign off on something that personally I wouldn't want to be downwind of it unless I knew that it was permitted, which meant that officials at EPA or DNR in Missouri had looked at it, or that, like you were saying, it's completely internal, and then I don't know how that works because you can't have volatile organic carbon filtering around in your air system all day.
Commissioner McDonough, I think.
I did a little bit of reading today. I think they have to get an EPA/OSHA permit for all that. They all get inspected. They have to get permits from the EPA and OSHA to open this.
Well,
You know,
I think a
whether
lot of
the
this
city
is.
but by the state
Yeah.
makes them get.
Well, yeah, and here's the EPA NESHAP, National Emission Standard for Hazardous Air Pollutants for paint stripping and surface coating operations.
Right.
And actually, they don't have to have anything if they don't use methyl chloride. So the very first question is, where you use methyl? If you use something else, then you're good for this. And then you have to go to look at your paint and whether it has cadmium, chromium, 3 other heavy metals. But again, it's a issue of what's going out your stack. And you're absolutely right. If they are doing those things, they have to get an EPA permit. If they're not doing those things, then they still have to have a plan that's being approved by the DNR.
Well, OSHA's gonna come in there and tell them if they get a permit.
Well,
These are things
OSHA's
that-
about
things the
workers.
city does not control. This is above city's control on that. When OSHA is involved, that is above us.
And that's something that we have to do our diligence on our end as well, as we've got to figure out which permits we need, and if they're not, or if they are operational permits, and that's something that Caliber will be doing themselves, whether it's EPA or Department of Environmental Quality, whoever it may be, we'll get the right permits.
I do have a question for our attorney. It looks like you were getting ready to punch in, but does that play into anything with our decision that we have to make this evening, as far as the
Well, I would address it as to Councilmember Powell's point of what entity gets to have the oversight of what sort of facilities go here. Well, that would have been a zoning decision by That would have been a zoning decision by the city council whenever they decided to zone the area C2. And then as it relates to the specific requirements you're getting into about chemicals used, I mean, that goes beyond the scope of what's going on here, which is limited to pretty specific requirements in the UDC of whether or not this actually fulfills those certain sections that Dave enumerated about C2 and motor vehicle repair shops. So I think it's pretty limited into what it can actually be looked at, not so much what the operation of an auto repair shop is getting into with its chemicals. I mean, I think they're important things to look at, but as it goes to whether or not a facility like this actually complies with the UDC, I'm not sure that that actually meets the administrative function of the Planning Commission.
So what you're saying is that they can build this building to the specs that they have, but they have to have permits from OSHA and DNR and EPA to actually perform the business, and it has to meet their requirements before they can operate. Is that what you're trying to say to me?
Yes, what I'm saying is those would be something separate and apart from this. I think those are laws in place that govern those things, but what happens at the Planning Commission is really whether or not this complies with C2 zoning.
Commissioner McDonough?
This question for Dave on the code enforcement and stuff. Well, does that other body shop, does that meet the code?
Yeah.
Are we gonna have anything like that?
Well, Mr. McDonough gave me some pictures. I thought it was a code enforcement inquiry, but yeah, we can look into a situation like this.
So
And
that's
I mean, this
that
is
something-
housekeeping. This is housekeeping. I just think that caliber is a different type of operation than,
Well, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too, but, you know, it might be ABC collision
Right.
next year.
right. Well, our code says no longer than 30 days,
Okay.
technically,
Well,
yes.
are we gonna start being more proactive instead of reactive on the, do we,
To the greatest extent we can.
yeah, that stuff's been there over a year.
And you're always going to find those situations, Tim. We
Right.
have 2
I
code
know.
enforcement officers, and we're doing a great job on a vast majority of the things we take on, and we appreciate finding this, and we'll look into it.
Okay. Don't patronize me, Dave.
Mayor?
Interesting.
Got several questions. My biggest question is about traffic and deliveries of vehicles, and I sure wish we had a Caliber person here tonight too. Is there any way in this permit that we can hold Caliber to a traffic study and how they get deliveries and how the tow trucks bring vehicles in, when they bring vehicles in? Is there any legal way we can do that? Have them develop some type of traffic? What I'm getting at is, I don't know if you're familiar with this, where this is at. It's butts up to a neighborhood. It's got commercial all the way around it. And what a lot of people are doing is they're cutting through the neighborhood to get away from the light at the major intersection up here. My concern is, and it's a concern of people that have contacted me from the neighborhood, is that they want to try to see it to where all the traffic that goes to this comes off of 58 and not cut through the neighborhood. That's the biggest concern of the most people that call me about this issue.
Well, I think that would be a question for Dave, is whether or not under C2, whether there's any requirements for traffic studies here to look at.
Well, in terms of an actual traffic study, this is a relatively low volume use, and it's not going to generate traffic that is beyond the capacity of the street. But I think what Mayor Larkey's talking about is just going forward a mitigation plan for automobiles in Bradford Place and trucks in Bradford Place. And I think it's reasonable to perhaps, with the approval, to attach a condition that Caliber present a plan at the time of building permit that talks about traffic mitigation in the residential area to the north and what kind of techniques they think they can bring forward to help address that. Now, obviously, something like that is only on paper. It's difficult to enforce, but if we have it on paper,
I understand.
we have an ability to go back to them in the future and say, hey, we have a traffic mitigation plan here, and we've had some complaints. We'd like to see what we can do to make sure this works.
I understand that was the biggest request out of the people that I've talked to about this. I've had one person that was absolutely totally against it regardless of what we did. And the rest of them understood that the city has to this falls under the city ordinances, and that it will be approved because of that. But their big concern was the traffic, and that's what my concern is.
So I guess perhaps we could ask Nick, could Caliber prepare what I just described as a traffic mitigation plan to reduce their traffic to the residential area to the north?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly open to doing something like that, but I'm just not sure I'm following completely what that would provide. I mean, we've got a full access drive on Bradford Lane there. I mean, everybody's going to be going directly in and out of that.
Right. Well, I guess you don't know the geography here, but
I'm sorry. What I'm talking about is you see where Bradford Drive comes down to 58, that the major road down. And if you go north, you're going into a residential neighborhood, and then it has an exit out into the other major north and south road. What they're afraid of is a lot of traffic is going to come off the highway when they're going to use GPS, and the GPS is going to route them through the neighborhood. What they're asking is there a way that we can have Caliber develop a plan to have them notified that they have to come all the way down Y Highway and come across 58 and then go north into the thing and not go north from the building? That's what they're asking, and I can strongly agree with that. I mean, to keep all that out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty easy ask. I think that's something we can certainly work towards.
So this would be something that would be added, like to staff recommendations then as an additional point, if a motion were made. We would just, with that addition, to ask that a traffic mitigation plan be submitted as well.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Any other?
I'm just questioning, how does that, I mean, when would that traffic study show up? Would this be a approval subject to that traffic study?
Well, I think we'd be proposing to add condition 4, that be submitted prior to issuance of a building permit.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I propose too that, I mean, I have a laundry list which would probably could be simply answered by a caliber person of, again, and I understand it's not about C2 zoning, which happened maybe 30 years ago. But anyway, the use of hazardous chemicals, I think it's really important that we're putting something that may be using hazardous chemicals and may be releasing them to the atmosphere with a permit. We should know, I personally believe we should know that before we approve plopping something down near a residence, whether we're worried about C2, or we're worried about the color of the blocks or the size of the parking lot or whatever. I really think that I would be concerned if I was living next to this. So again, to the extent that they could answer our question maybe with a paragraph saying, we don't have to have any permits in Missouri because it's not required, we don't use the right chemicals, we use water-based paints, blah, blah, blah. That would be totally satisfactory to me if I could get that assurance, but.
But could we just add condition 5 to
That's
that
what I was gonna say.
extent?
Can we
You know,
add
just
that?
that Caliber provide information on permitting by other agencies pertaining to discharge and what.
Hazardous material.
Hazardous
Use
materials.
and
yes.
discharge of hazardous materials.
Yes, I think we can, I think that can be easily provided.
And then finally, hate to belabor this, because it really doesn't have to do with this, but it does have to do with something immediately downstream, which I guess the building permit is something that another group of people within Belton look at, correct? Or maybe it's just you, Dave, is that?
Well, we have a plan reviewer, but that's my responsibility, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so if, how can I say this? How do you, or somebody in your position, how do you evaluate that when they say, well, we need this permit, but we don't need that permit? Because we don't have a pollution control engineer here in Belton. How is that? How are those decisions made?
I think we would rely on the permitting requirements of whatever applicable agency there is.
Okay, so you would ask to see their EPA permit, or if they said they didn't need one, you would call up the EPA and say, or do the research on your own to see if that was the case or whatever, okay?
We would take appropriate steps to gain the knowledge that we need to know that they're getting appropriate permits.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Or motions?
I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding both of the additional requirements. As far as the traffic mitigation plan, is that just going to be an additional sheet in the construction documents? I just want to make sure we're not signing up for a full-blown traffic study.
No,
that's
it's not a
gonna-
traffic
yeah.
study, Ms. Fjord. It's just a letter of a strategy for mitigating traffic in the residential area to the north.
Okay.
And that could be signage, it could be a notice to truck drivers, it could be notice to customers. I mean, I think they can put some thought to it and get something that's simple but solves the problem, addresses a concern.
Okay. And then the second requirement is just notifying you guys how we're going to address the necessary permits.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Would entertain for a motion if there are no more questions.
I will will make a motion to approve the final development plan for Caliber Collision located at the west side of Bradford Lane, approximately 400 feet north of East North Avenue at 160 Bradford Lane.
And do we need to include with that the addition of points 4 and 5?
With the addition of points 4 and 5 brought up from the Planning Commission.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. And do we have a second? All right, have a motion and second. Any final thoughts? If not, may we have the roll call?
Commissioner Vest,
Aye.
Commissioner Pryan,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough,
Aye.
Commissioner Monahan Bass,
Aye.
Commissioner Christie,
Aye.
Councilman Powell,
No.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
and Chairman McPherson.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nick,
Appreciate your time.
for
Thank
being
you.
here and for addressing our questions
Thank you.
tonight. Okay, moving on to our next item of business, which is, again, a non-public hearing for consideration of a final plat for Martinwood Addition, replat of Lot 3 located on the west side of Harris Avenue, just north of 162nd Street at 16110 Harris Avenue. Director?
Okay. I seem to have lost my overhead here, but let me see if I can just summarize this. It's a proposed two-lot final plat at 16110 North Harris Avenue. This is a replat of Lot 3, Martinwood Addition. Lot 3 is an existing vacant lot. It's 150 by 152 feet with length and width for a total area of 22,800 square feet. Going to split that exactly in half to create two lots of 75 by 152, about 11,000 square feet each. Our code does have minimum lot size requirements of 70 by 120. That's 8,400 square feet. So these proposed lots are about 3,000 square feet more than the minimum of the code. There's no new access or right-of-way necessary with this plat. The final plat includes appropriate language for easements and has appropriate information for lot numbers, dimensions, right-of-way designations, and a surveyor's credential. So thank you very much for finding that, but I think I'll just leave it at that, and staff recommends approval of the two-lot replat.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments concerning this? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the final plat for the Martinwood Addition replat of Lot 3 located on the west side of Harris Avenue, just north of 162nd Street at 16110 Harris Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor. We have the motion. Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Bass. Any final comments? We,
You guys want to say anything? Just making sure. I didn't want you to feel left out.
I knew they were here, and I thought about it, and it was like, we made them sit this long for nothing, but
Haven't felt left out.
I appreciate you thinking about that, Mayor. So if there are no additional comments, may we have the roll call?
Commissioner Vest,
Aye.
Commissioner Pryan,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough,
Aye.
Commissioner Monahan Bass,
Aye.
Commissioner Christie,
Aye.
Councilman Powell,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
and Chairman McPherson.
Aye. So, all right, thank you. And we are ready for the director's report.
Just a brief item. I think I want the Planning Commission to know that we're working on several amendments to the Unified Development Code. Anticipate having a public hearing in September on some of those code changes. So I thought if there's some things that you've come across in your work with our Planning Commission in terms of code amendments, things that you think we ought to fine tune, please let me know. And then maybe what we'll do, if the commission would like to, we'll maybe kind of roll those out to you at the August meeting. kind of have a shorter agenda, but maybe we can have a little working session on some of those proposed amendments and kind of fine tune them to get ready for a public hearing in September. So just let you know we're working on that.
All right, thank you. And our next meeting is scheduled for August 16th.
Yes.
And we do know that we've got one item continued from our agenda packet tonight, so. Anything?
Motion to adjourn?
I hear that motion. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.